Nico Hulkenberg holds one of Formula One's most unwanted records, most race starts without a podium finish. It's a question that's plagued the German for years. When would he score that elusive podium? And the answer now is probably never. With Formula One options fading and other series in his sights, Hulkenberg will likely forever remain one of motorsport's great what-ifs. This is our new series, Untapped Potential, where we look at Formula One drivers that didn't make the most of their careers and unravel why it didn't work out. And Episode 1 is the Incredible Hulk, Nico Hulkenberg. The funny thing with Nico Hulkenberg is that even if he did finally score that elusive podium, he still wouldn't have lived up to his full potential. In his junior days, he was managed by Willy Webber, the same guy who managed Michael Schumacher, and he described Hulkenberg as an unbelievable talent, saying that he could be the next Schumacher. And it's easy to see why. He was a winning machine in his junior career. It didn't matter whether it was Formula BMW, A1GP, Formula 3, Hulkenberg showed up, and more often than not, he won. And when he stepped up to GP2 in 2009, he had the type of season that marks drivers out as a future star. He won the championship at the first time of asking by a clear 25-point margin, and he became one of a handful of drivers to win both the sprint and feature races on the same weekend, doing the double at his home race at the Nürburgring. His junior record is up there with some of the greatest in the sport, and his GP2 championship win was just as, if not more impressive than Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton's before him. And if you looked at his junior record alone, you'd be sure that he'd be an F1 star in the future. He'd already done some testing for Williams, and they then signed him up for a full-time drive for the 2010 season, and he had all the hallmarks of a driver that would hit the ground running. After a quietly impressive first season in Formula One, he had his breakout moment at the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2010, shocking the world by taking pole position in an unfavoured Williams. It was a damp day in Interlagos, and Hulkenberg mastered the conditions, taking pole by over a second, ahead of championship contenders Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber, Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, all of whom couldn't get around how this young Williams driver had beaten them to top spot by such a margin. It felt like one of those special, rare moments where a future world champion announces themselves to the world. But then Williams dropped him at the end of the season, replacing him with Pastor Maldonado and his millions in sponsorship money. The F1 world was shocked, and Hulkenberg's brief moment in the spotlight was over. In his season review at the end of 2010, pundit Martin Brundle said that Nico Hulkenberg had all the hallmarks of being a future star, and said that Williams were crazy to let him go, before going on to compare him to Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. But hey, all wasn't lost, and Force India picked him up as a test driver and then promoted him to the main team for 2012. And he did a really good job. He scored points on a regular basis, and he came close to a first podium with a 4th place in Belgium, finishing just seconds behind 3rd place finisher Kimi Raikkonen. And then came his second attempt at making a name for himself at Interlagos in the season finale. He'd qualified a strong 7th, but rain on race day provided the perfect opportunity for the German to show how good he was in the wet. He picked his way through the order early on, passing faster cars, and ended up battling with the McLarens of Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton for the lead of the race, and all of this in a Force India that was the 7th best car on the grid that season. He looked comfortable out front for much of the race, and then disaster struck. A small spin dropped him behind Hamilton before he closed the McLaren man down again, and then came the pivotal moment. He dived down the inside of Hamilton into turn 1 between a couple of back markers, and he lost control off of the racing line and the two collided. Hamilton was out of the race, and Hulkenberg went on to finish in 5th. It was his golden opportunity to take that breakthrough win, or at least a podium, which would have forced the leading teams to take notice, but it just wasn't meant to be. And Hulkenberg himself calls this the moment that his career would have taken a different course had he gone on to win that race. Timing is absolutely everything in Formula One, and Hulkenberg was often never in the right place at the right time. Had Lewis Hamilton not signed with Mercedes for 2013, Ross Brawn has revealed that Hulkenberg was their second choice for the Silver Arrow drive. Instead, Hulk ended up at Sauber in the midfield. Had things been different and Hulkenberg gone to Mercedes, we might have been looking at him as a multiple-time world champion, or at least a multiple-time race winner. But this wasn't his only shot at a top drive. He really did impress for the Ferrari-powered Sauber team, and that almost opened doors at the Scuderia itself for the following season. With Felipe Massa moving on to drive for Williams, Ferrari needed a driver to partner Fernando Alonso for the 2014 season, and Hulkenberg seemed to be the obvious choice. He was a young talent who'd impressed at both Force India and Williams, and then again at Sauber, who were a customer of Ferrari, and it just seemed like the perfect fit. But again, it was not meant to be, and Kimi Raikkonen became available after falling out with Lotus at the end of 2013, and Ferrari picked up the Iceman turn instead. Hulkenberg said that he missed out on the Ferrari seat by a bee sting and he instead rejoined Force India for the 2014 season. And there were more opportunities still after that. When Nico Rosberg's shock retirement left Mercedes needing a last-minute replacement, Hulkenberg was one of the favourites, but his timing was absolutely abysmal again and he just agreed to join the recovering Renault team. Valtteri Bottas of course got the nod instead and then went on to take multiple wins for the Silver Arrows. But after that the opportunities became far less concrete. There were rumours that he might be in the running for a Red Bull seat to replace Daniel Ricciardo, or that he could have joined Ferrari to replace Raikkonen or Sebastian Vettel when they left the team, but nothing ever came to fruition. In F1 you need to be in the right team at the right time, and the timing never worked out for Hulkenberg to elevate himself into one of those top tier drives. And while luck was a factor against Hulkenberg, there were also times where he just didn't take his chances. In their time as teammates together at Force India, Sergio Perez went on to take 3 podiums for the team, showing that the car had the potential to do the same for Hulkenberg. And in fact, Perez's 2 podiums in 2016 could easily have both gone to Hulkenberg instead. At Monaco, it was a strategy error that allowed Perez to jump his teammate and take the 3rd place, while in Baku, Perez was able to put the car on the front row of the grid before taking a grid penalty which left him 7th. He did score a 3rd in the race from there though, whilst Hulkenberg could only manage 12th in qualifying after a mistake and then ended up 9th in the race. A couple of opportunities came up in his time at Renault as well. He was on for a podium in Singapore in 2017 before he had to retire with an oil leak, and he clipped the wall whilst running in 3rd place at the chaotic 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. It was also just his luck that after he left the Renault team, Daniel Ricciardo was able to take 2 podiums, while the German only had 3 chances as a stand-in for Racing Point. It's just an unfortunate truth for Hulkenberg that when the opportunity to take a podium came up, he either suffered from a driver error or some kind of mechanical issue. Unless another last-minute substitute opportunity comes up, it may be that Nico Hulkenberg has had his last chance to take that elusive podium. But the real tragedy is that his talent deserved much more than just a single podium. For a driver once labelled as the next Michael Schumacher to spend a decade stuck in Formula One's midfield is not what anybody expected. The record books will make it look like Hulkenberg was a completely average driver, but the truth is that he had the potential to be so much more, and instead we're left wondering what would have happened had he not collided with Hamilton on that rainy afternoon at Interlagos. Let us know your thoughts on Nico Hulkenberg in the comments, and if there's another driver you'd like to see covered in an episode of Untapped Potential, just let us know. Thank you very much for watching, and please give this video a like and subscribe for more content from Formula Pulse.